And right, the big thing was that these animals were just decimated very rapidly by the commercial whaling industry in the early 1900s, and commercial whaling stopped in the mid-1970s with the moratorium on commercial whaling and the development of the International Whaling Commission. It's, you know, it's pretty amazing to actually go down to Antarctica, and in some places, if you're lucky enough, I've gotten to go to a few of these places, you see the remnants of these whales that were killed, some of them over 100 years ago. You go to places like Port Lockroy or out in the Juban Islands near Palmer Station, where I do my work, and if it's calm enough, you just look and it's just a whale graveyard of bones all over at the bottom in relatively shallow water.
So the Marine Mammal Protection Act came to fruition, believe it or not, during Nixon's administration. In 1972, the Marine Mammal Protection Act came into play to protect whales, dolphins, pinnipeds, sea otters, dugongs, and manatees. So it's a pretty broad swath of organisms, of which we have almost everything besides dugongs and manatees here in Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. And that act is really, you cannot take, you cannot harass, you cannot disturb or alter the natural behavior of any of these organisms. And that has been pivotal.
I'm really interested in reproduction physiology and what we can learn from a biopsy that we collect from an animal. And we have some props. So this crossbow here is actually what we use to collect the tissue samples from the animals. My studies are completely based off that tissue sample that's about the size of your pinky finger. We get generally a little bit of the epidermis or the skin layer, and then an inch or two of blubber beneath that. And from that blubber, we can extract pregnancy hormones. And that's what a lot of my work is looked at, trying to understand when these animals are getting pregnant, if we can actually detect if the females are in fact pregnant. And it is sort of showing this big conservation success, and that these populations, particularly where we work along the Western Arctic Peninsula, that these animals are recovering potentially a lot faster than we might have thought historically, and potentially at rates that appear to be potentially biologically implausible for something like large whales. For me, at least, there's just this inherent nature of respecting the wilderness and the animals that are part of that. And, you know, as humans, I often think that we are part of that wilderness as well. And so from that perspective, I know just having respect for those organisms, and, you know, understanding that, you know, they are beings on this earth as well. But if you think of whales as sort of the ocean's trees, right, they're sequestering a lot of carbon. And with the removal of the 2.5 million whales that were removed during the industrial whaling era, I think scientists did a calculation that during the whaling era they moved something along the order of like 2.5 times 10 to the 7 like metric tons of carbon were put back into the ocean with the removal of those whales.
Oh, lovely.